Welcome to Easy English Story, where real-life stories come alive in simple English. From legends to icons, every story here is full of inspiration, motivation, and life lessons. Perfect for learning English the easy way. Let's dive into today's journey. George Washington, the father of his country. Introduction. When we think of leadership, courage, and humility, few names rise to the top like George Washington. Known as the father of his country, he led the American colonies to freedom, helped draft the U.S. Constitution, and became the first president of the United States. Yet behind the title was a man of complexity, part soldier, part statesman, and above all, a dedicated patriot. This is his full story, from a boy in colonial Virginia to the man whose name now stands for liberty and the American dream. Chapter 1. Humble Beginnings in Virginia. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, to Augustine Washington and his second wife, Mary Ball Washington. His family was moderately wealthy, owning plantations and enslaved people, though not among the elite. When George was only 11, his father died, and he didn't receive the elite classical education that many of his peers did. Instead, he studied mathematics, trigonometry, and surveying. By the age of 16, Washington began working as a land surveyor, helping map the western frontiers of Virginia. This work hardened him physically and exposed him to frontier life, skills that would later serve him well in military campaigns. Chapter 2. The French and Indian War. In 1753, tensions between the French and British flared over territory in the Ohio Valley. A 21-year-old George Washington was sent by the Virginia governor to deliver a warning to the French. His mission failed, but it marked the beginning of his military career. In 1754, Washington led a small force that clashed with the French at Fort Necessity, suffering a defeat. Though a setback, it put Washington in the public eye. He then served as an officer under British General Edward Braddock, barely escaping death during the disastrous Battle of the Monongahela in 1755. These early years shaped Washington's view of military structure, discipline, and leadership lessons he would apply in the future Revolutionary War. Chapter 3. The Farmer and Statesman. After resigning from the military, Washington returned to his estate, Mount Vernon, and in 1759 married Martha Custis, a wealthy widow. Though they had no children together, Washington adopted and raised her 2 children from her previous marriage. At Mount Vernon, Washington focused on farming and eventually expanded his plantation. He was a progressive farmer for his time, rotating crops and testing new tools. Yet, like many Virginia planters, he owned enslaved people, a fact that would remain a dark contradiction in his legacy. During these years, he also entered politics, serving in the Virginia House of Burgesses. As colonial discontent grew over British taxes and policies, Washington's stance hardened from moderate to Revolutionary. Chapter 4, Call to Revolution. In 1774, Washington was selected as a delegate to the First Continental Congress, a meeting of colonial leaders. When war with Britain broke out in 1775 at Lexington and Concord, Congress appointed Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He accepted the role without pay, declaring, "I do not think myself equal to the command I am honored with." Leading an army of untrained farmers against the might of the British Empire, Washington faced enormous challenges: lack of money, food, weapons, and training. His leadership during these times would become legendary. Chapter 5, The Revolutionary War Hero. Washington's military career during the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, was a story of perseverance more than constant victory. He lost battles: New York, 1776, Philadelphia, 1777, but won when it counted most. His bold surprise attack on Trenton on Christmas night, 1776, where he famously crossed the Delaware River, became a turning point. His strategic retreating, daring moves, and charismatic leadership kept the Continental Army together through freezing winters, hunger, and disease. At Valley Forge, 1777-78, his men endured unimaginable suffering, but Washington's determination inspired loyalty. With help from foreign allies like France, Lafayette, and Rochambeau, and Prussian trainer Baron von Steuben, the army improved dramatically. Finally, in 1781, Washington, alongside French troops, trapped British General Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia, forcing his surrender. The war was effectively over. Chapter 6, Resigning Power. In 1783, after the Treaty of Paris ended the war, Washington did something unprecedented. He resigned his commission as Commander-in-Chief and returned to Mount Vernon. This act stunned the world. Rather than seize political power, as many expected, Washington quietly went home. King George III reportedly said, "If he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world." Washington's actions set a new global standard. That power should be given back to the people, not hoarded by generals. Chapter 7, The Constitution and a New Nation. In 1787, with the fledgling country facing chaos under the Articles of Confederation, Washington was asked to preside over the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. His presence gave legitimacy and calm to the process. The result, the U.S. Constitution with a strong executive branch. All eyes turned to Washington to lead again. He was unanimously elected as the first President of the United States. In 1789, Chapter 8, The First President. Washington took office on April 30th, 1789. In New York City, then the nation's capital, his every action set a precedent. How to address the President, Mr. President, the cabinet system, term limits, and even the inaugural oath. His administration handled major challenges, establishing a national bank under Alexander Hamilton, handling the Whiskey Rebellion, showing federal authority, declaring neutrality during the French Revolution, creating a Bill of Rights with Congress. Despite tensions between Federalists and Republicans, Washington stayed above party politics. He served 2 terms, 1789 to 1797, then stepped down voluntarily, another world-changing precedent. Chapter 9. The Farewell Address. In 1796, Washington released his farewell address, written with help from Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. In it, he warned against political parties, foreign entanglements, sectional divisions. His message remains relevant over 200 years later. Chapter 10. Final Years and Death. Washington returned to Mount Vernon in 1797. In retirement, he managed his plantation, dealt with mounting debts, and struggled with the moral issue of slavery. Near the end of his life, he made provisions to free his enslaved. Workers after his wife's death, a rare act among founding fathers. On December 14, 1799, George Washington died of a throat infection at the age of 67. He was buried at Mount Vernon, where his tomb remains a national shrine. Legacy. George Washington's legacy is immense. He is the only U.S. president unanimously elected twice. The nation's capital, the state of Washington, countless schools, roads, and monuments are named after him. His face appears on the $1 bill and the quarter. He was posthumously promoted to General of the Armies, the highest rank ever in U.S. history. But more than symbols, his example of voluntary leadership, humility, and dedication to democracy defines the American identity. More than a myth, George Washington was not a flawless man. He made mistakes in battle, owned slaves, and sometimes doubted himself. But he rose above personal ambition to lead a people toward freedom. He was not a king, nor did he want to be. He was a servant of the Republic, a builder of institutions, and a man of deep personal honor. More than 200 years later, his words and actions still echo in the halls of power and the hearts of the people. George Washington didn't just lead a revolution. He led by example.